The artificial sunlight of New Eden Colony cast long shadows across the market district as Dr. Maya Patel checked her credit balance for the third time in 5 minutes. The small device on her wrist displayed the same depressing number, 847 credits. Not nearly enough for a week's worth of groceries, even with careful planning and the cheapest possible selections. "Mama, can we get the berry synthesizers today?" 8-year-old Zoe asked, pointing toward the colorful display of fruit-flavored nutrition bars near the market entrance. Maya forced a smile and guided her daughter toward the shopping carts. "Let's see what we need first, sweetheart. We can always come back for treats." The New Eden Colony Market served as the only source of food and supplies for the 3,000 residents of the mining settlement. Corporate efficiency meant everything was processed through automated systems. Inventory tracking, price optimization, and payment processing all handled by AI systems that never experienced empathy or understood human need. Maya pulled up her shopping list on her wrist display, a carefully calculated array of items designed to provide maximum nutrition for minimum cost. Protein paste, vitamin supplements, hydration tablets, and basic carbohydrates. Nothing appetizing, but everything necessary for survival on a frontier world where fresh food was a luxury reserved for corporate executives. "Dr. Patel," called a cheerful voice from behind the central checkout station. "How's the atmospheric research going?" Maya looked up to see Kai Thompson waving from his position at one of the manual checkout lanes. The former mining engineer had been working retail for 6 months now, ever since a tunnel collapse left him with a permanent limp and a desk job assignment. His friendly demeanor seemed incongruous with the sterile efficiency of the corporate-run market. "Slowly but surely," Maya replied, steering her cart toward the produce section. "The symbiotic relationships between the native plant species are more complex than we initially theorized." Kai nodded enthusiastically. "That's fascinating. I always wondered why some areas of the planet support human agriculture while others seem completely hostile to Earth crops. It's all about soil chemistry and atmospheric pressure," Maya explained, grateful for a conversation that didn't revolve around credits and costs. "The native microorganisms create conditions that are either beneficial or harmful to imported species." Zoe had wandered ahead to examine the hydroponic vegetables, her small hands pressed against the protective barriers that kept the expensive fresh produce safe from contamination. Maya watched her daughter study the tomatoes and lettuce with the intensity of a scientist, noting colors and textures that existed nowhere else in their daily lives. "Those look pretty good," Kai observed, joining them near the produce display. "Chef Williams does amazing things with the fresh vegetables in the executive dining hall." Maya's smile tightened slightly. The executive dining hall might as well have existed on another planet for all the relevance it had to her life. Her meal plan consisted of whatever she could afford from the standard rations available to lower-level employees. "I'm sure it's wonderful," she said diplomatically, pulling Zoe away from the produce section. "We should get moving. I have a deadline to meet this afternoon." The next hour was an exercise in careful mathematics. Maya consulted her wrist display constantly, running calculations that balanced nutritional requirements against available credits. Every item had to be justified, every decision measured against survival rather than preference. "Mama, why do you keep looking at your wrist?" Zoe asked as they moved through the aisles. "Just keeping track of our shopping list," Maya replied, which was technically true if incomplete. The protein section offered the best value for credits spent, though the products bore little resemblance to actual food. Synthetic meat paste provided essential amino acids, while algae-based supplements delivered vitamins and minerals. Maya selected the largest containers available, knowing that bulk purchases offered better long-term value even if they strained her immediate budget. Zoe helped by reading labels and comparing products, her 8-year-old math skills surprisingly helpful in calculating unit costs. Maya felt a pang of guilt watching her daughter navigate economic hardship with such matter-of-fact acceptance. No child should have to understand the relationship between nutrition and affordability. "Is this one better?" Zoe asked, holding up a container of vitamin supplements that cost 20 credits less than Maya's selection. Maya checked the nutritional information inside. The cheaper version contained half the vitamins but lasted half as long, making it ultimately more expensive. The other one is actually a better deal, sweetheart. Sometimes the cheaper option costs more in the long run. Like buying a better mining drill so it doesn't break as often. Exactly like that. You're very smart. They continued through the market, their cart slowly filling with the necessities of frontier life. Maya kept a running total in her head, adjusting quantities and making substitutions as needed to stay within her limited budget. Each compromise felt like a small failure, evidence of her inability to provide properly for her daughter. As they approached the checkout area, Maya's wrist display showed her current selection would cost 1,247 credits, exactly 400 credits more than she could afford. Time to start making difficult choices about which essentials were truly essential. The medical emergency had started 3 days earlier with what seemed like a simple cough. Zoe had been playing in the colony's recreation area when the atmospheric recycling system experienced a minor malfunction, exposing the children to slightly elevated levels of industrial particulates. Most kids showed no symptoms, but Zoe's developing respiratory system reacted poorly to the contamination. It's a common adjustment reaction, Dr. Hassan had explained at the medical facility, his tone professional but sympathetic. Children sometimes need time to adapt to the atmospheric composition here. The medication will help, but it's not cheap. The prescription had cost 2,100 credits, nearly 3 weeks of Maya's salary. She'd used her entire emergency fund, leaving her account dangerously low with 12 days until the next paycheck. The irony wasn't lost on her that as a xenobiologist studying atmospheric adaptation, she couldn't afford to help her own daughter adapt to the alien environment. Now, standing in the market with a cart full of necessities she couldn't afford, Maya felt the weight of impossible choices. Zoe's medication was working, but the child still coughed occasionally, a reminder of how quickly their precarious situation could become catastrophic. "Mama, are you okay?" Zoe asked, noticing her mother's hands trembling slightly as she reviewed their shopping list for the 4th time. "Just tired, sweetheart. Why don't you pick out one of those picture books from the reading corner while I finish up here?" Maya needed a moment to think without her daughter watching her struggle with basic arithmetic. 847 credits. 1,247 credits worth of necessities. The numbers refused to reconcile no matter how many times she recalculated. The automated shopping system helpfully suggested substitutions as she removed items from her cart. Lower-grade protein paste. Generic vitamin supplements with questionable efficacy. Smaller portions that would leave them hungry by week's end. Each algorithmic recommendation felt like a judgment on her ability to provide for her family. "Dr. Patel?" Kai's voice interrupted her calculations. "Everything all right? You look like you're wrestling with one of those atmospheric equations." Maya forced a laugh. "Something like that. Just trying to optimize our shopping efficiency." Kai's engineering background made him naturally observant, and she could see him noting the items she'd removed from her cart, the way she kept checking her credit balance, the slight stress lines around her eyes that hadn't been there last week. "You know," he said casually, "I've been thinking about what you said regarding soil chemistry. Would you mind if I stopped by your lab sometime? I have some theories about mineral extraction that might relate to your agricultural research." "Of course," Maya replied, grateful for the distraction. "Though fair warning, my research space isn't exactly luxurious. Corporate funding for xenobiology isn't what it used to be. Neither is funding for anything that doesn't directly increase mining output," Kai said with a rueful smile. "I learned that when they transferred me from engineering to retail." The conversation helped Maya relax slightly, though her mathematical problem remained unsolved. Around them, other shoppers moved efficiently through their purchases, their credit balances apparently sufficient for their needs. A corporate executive's family filled their cart with fresh produce and imported delicacies. A mining supervisor selected premium nutrition bars and recreational beverages. Maya watched them with a scientist's detachment, noting the social stratification that determined access to resources. The colony's egalitarian principles applied only to basic survival. Everyone received housing, medical care, and minimum caloric intake. Beyond that, the free market determined quality of life. Mama, look. Zoe returned with excitement, holding a thin digital reader. This book has pictures of Earth animals. There are creatures called dolphins that live in water and jump really high. That sounds wonderful, Maya said, checking the reader's price. 15 credits, not expensive, but 15 credits more than she could spare. Can we get it? Please. I promise I'll read it every day. Maya felt her heart breaking as she gently took the reader from her daughter's hands. Not today, sweetheart. Maybe next payday. Zoe's face fell, but she nodded with the resignation of a child who had learned not to expect immediate gratification. Okay, Mama. I understand. The simple acceptance in her daughter's voice made Maya's situation feel even more desperate. Zoe was learning to live without things because her mother couldn't provide them. That lesson would shape her expectations for the rest of her life. Actually, Kai said, appearing beside them with his employee override scanner, that reader is part of our educational outreach program. Free to families with children under 12. Maya started to protest, recognizing his kindness for what it was, but Kai was already processing the transaction through his system. Company policy, he said with a wink that suggested otherwise. Can't argue with corporate regulations. Zoe hugged the digital reader with pure joy, already absorbed in the colorful images of Earth wildlife. Maya caught Kai's eye and mouthed, "Thank you," receiving a subtle nod in return. But the reader, generous as it was, didn't solve her larger problem. She still needed to remove 400 credits worth of necessities from her cart, choosing which basic needs to sacrifice for the remainder of the pay period. The checkout line moved with mechanical efficiency as Maya stood behind a mining foreman and his family, watching them load premium food items onto the conveyor belt without checking prices or calculating costs. Their 8-year-old son casually selected candy from the impulse display while their teenage daughter added a recreational tablet to their purchase. The total came to over 3,000 credits, processed instantly through their neural payment implants without hesitation. Maya's own cart looked sparse by comparison. Even after removing what she couldn't afford, the remaining items barely filled the bottom shelf: basic protein paste, essential vitamins, and hydration tablets. The mathematical minimum required for survival. Next customer, the automated system announced in its pleasantly neutral voice. Maya pushed her cart forward, her hands trembling slightly as she began placing items on the conveyor belt. Zoe stood beside her, still engrossed in the digital reader, occasionally making excited sounds at new animal discoveries. Look, Mama. This one is called a giraffe and it has a neck as long as our hallway. That's amazing, sweetheart, Maya replied, trying to inject enthusiasm into her voice while internally calculating whether she could afford even this reduced selection. Kai appeared at the manual checkout station, his smile warm and genuine. Find everything you needed today? More or less, Maya said, which was technically accurate if you defined needed very strictly. The scanning process began, each item's price appearing on the display as Kai processed her modest selection. Maya watched the total climb: 200, 350, 500, 673, 789, 834 credits. Still manageable, though it would leave only 13 credits in her account for the next 12 days. Then Kai scanned the protein paste container, and Maya's heart sank. The price had increased since her last visit. Corporate algorithms adjusting costs based on demand and supply fluctuations. The new total, 924 credits. 77 credits more than she possessed. Oh, she said quietly, staring at the display. There seems to be a price change. Let me check, Kai said, though they both knew the automated system didn't make mistakes about pricing. Behind her, Maya could hear other customers shuffling impatiently. A woman made a pointed comment about efficiency to her companion. Someone else sighed dramatically. I'm sorry, Maya said, addressing the line behind her. This will just take a moment. She began removing items from her order, starting with the protein paste. Without it, they'd have to rely entirely on vitamin supplements for nutrition, but those were cheaper per calorie even if less satisfying. Mama? Zoe looked up from her reader, sensing tension in her mother's voice. Is something wrong? No, sweetheart. Just adjusting our shopping list. Maya's scientific training helped her approach the problem methodically. Remove the protein paste, new total 734 credits. Still too high. Remove half the vitamin supplements, 651 credits. Getting closer. Remove the hydration tablets and rely on recycled water, 589 credits. Within range, barely. But as she pushed items back across the counter, Maya felt each compromise as a personal failure. Her daughter would go hungry. They would both survive, but survival wasn't the same as thriving. Zoe needed proper nutrition to recover fully from her respiratory infection, to grow strong in an alien environment that constantly challenged human physiology. Actually, Maya said suddenly, I think I need to reconsider this entire purchase. Could you hold these items while I check something? Kai nodded understandingly. Of course. Take your time. The customers behind her groaned audibly. Some people should plan better, one muttered. Maybe learn basic math before shopping, added another. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, embarrassment mixing with anger at the casual cruelty. These people, her neighbors, her colleagues, reducing her situation to personal inadequacy rather than systemic inequality. Come on, Zoe, she said, stepping away from the checkout counter. Let's look at some other options. But there were no other options. The market's prices were fixed by corporate algorithms. Her credit balance was determined by her employment level. The mathematics of poverty allowed no room for creativity or hope. As they moved away from the checkout area, Maya caught sight of her reflection in one of the store's security mirrors. She looked exhausted, stressed, older than her 34 years. The weight of constant financial pressure was wearing her down, and she worried about what example she was setting for Zoe. Mama, why did those people say mean things? Zoe asked as they pretended to browse the produce section. Because sometimes people forget that we're all just trying to do our best, Maya replied, though privately she thought some people had simply never faced real hardship and couldn't imagine circumstances beyond their own experience. Are we going home without food? The question cut straight to Maya's heart. We'll figure something out, sweetheart. We always do. But for the first time since arriving on New Eden Colony, Maya wasn't sure that was true. Her emergency fund was depleted. Her credit balance couldn't cover basic necessities. And payday was still 12 days away. Standing in the market surrounded by abundance she couldn't access, Maya felt the full weight of her isolation. No family to call for help. No friends wealthy enough to lend credits. No safety net beyond her own intelligence and determination, which suddenly seemed inadequate against the simple reality of insufficient numbers in her account. Dr. Patel? Kai's voice interrupted her spiral of despair. I think there might be a solution to your checkout problem. Maya looked up from the produce display where she'd been pretending to examine overpriced vegetables, hope and skepticism warring in her expression. A solution? Kai nodded toward his checkout station with a casual smile. Company discount program. I should have mentioned it earlier, but I wasn't sure if you qualified until I checked the system. Maya knew there was no such program. Kai was clearly improvising, but she allowed him to guide her and Zoe back to the checkout counter. The other customers had moved to different lines, leaving them with a moment of relative privacy. Let me just scan your employee ID, Kai said, pulling up a screen that Maya couldn't see. Ah, there we go. Research Division discount applies to essential nutrition items. 25% off. Kai, Maya said quietly, you don't have to. Company policy, he interrupted with a wink, beginning to scan her items again. Can't argue with corporate regulations. But Maya watched the display carefully this time, and she could see what was really happening. As each item was scanned, Kai was manually adjusting the prices, his fingers flying over controls that weren't normally accessible to cashiers. When the protein paste appeared on screen at its full price, he immediately modified it downward. The vitamin supplements received similar treatment. The system's being a bit slow today, Kai said conversationally, covering the sound of his unauthorized price adjustments. But we'll get this sorted out. The final total appeared on the display, 623 credits. Well within Maya's available balance, though she knew the actual cost was significantly higher. Kai was using his own employee account to cover the difference, disguising his generosity as a corporate discount that didn't exist. I can't let you do this, Maya protested, though her voice lacked conviction. She needed these groceries. Zoe needed proper nutrition. Do what? Kai asked innocently, processing her payment through the neural link. I'm just following standard procedures for qualified research staff. The transaction completed successfully, transferring 623 credits from Maya's account while Kai's own balance absorbed the remaining cost. Maya watched him bag her groceries with the same efficient professionalism he showed all customers, though his smile seemed warmer somehow. Thank you, she said quietly, the words inadequate for what his kindness meant to her and Zoe. Just doing my job, Kai replied, then leaned closer to add in a lower voice, though if you wanted to discuss those soil chemistry theories sometime, I'd appreciate the educational opportunity. Maybe over coffee. Maya understood the subtext. He wasn't looking for repayment or romantic interest, but genuine friendship. Someone to talk with about topics more meaningful than credit balances and survival calculations. I'd like that, she said sincerely. Very much. As they left the market, Zoe chattering excitedly about her new digital reader and the groceries they'd managed to purchase, Maya reflected on the unexpected kindness of a near stranger. Kai hadn't simply given her charity, he preserved her dignity while solving her immediate problem. Over the following weeks, their coffee meetings became a regular occurrence. Maya shared her research into New Eden's ecosystem, while Kai provided insights into the colony's infrastructure from his engineering background. Their conversations revealed shared interests beyond their professional expertise, concerns about the corporate colony's social inequality, ideas for community improvement, and dreams of a more equitable future. You know, Kai said during one of their discussions, there are other families struggling with the same issues you faced. The Hendersons in Housing Block 7. The Williams family since their eldest son got injured in the mines. Maya nodded thoughtfully. I've been thinking about that. My research position gives me access to budget allocations and resource distribution data. There might be ways to help that don't violate corporate policies. What kind of ways? Educational programs. Nutrition optimization workshops. Maybe a community garden project using my atmospheric research to improve crop yields. Kai's eyes lit up with interest. The engineering division has been looking for practical applications for some of our efficiency improvements. What if we combined resources? Their collaboration began small, informal workshops on financial planning and nutrition optimization. But word spread quickly through the colony's tight-knit community. Other employees began attending, sharing their own struggles and solutions. The market's management, impressed by increased customer satisfaction scores, began supporting their initiatives. 6 months later, Maya received a promotion to senior xenobiologist, her community programs having demonstrated the practical value of her research. The salary increase finally provided financial security for her and Zoe, but more importantly, it gave her resources to expand their mutual aid network. I can finally pay you back for those groceries, she told Kai during one of their planning meetings for the colony's first formal community assistance program. Kai shook his head with a smile. You already did. Look around. Maya surveyed the community center they'd established, filled with families sharing resources and knowledge. Children played together while parents attended workshops on everything from hydroponics to financial literacy. The colony's rigid hierarchy remained, but within it, they'd created pockets of cooperation and mutual support. Besides, Kai added, I think Zoe's learned more about kindness from watching you help other families than she ever would have from knowing about that one grocery bill. Maya watched her daughter teaching younger children how to read using the digital tablet that had started their friendship. Zoe had grown up understanding both scarcity and generosity, developing empathy that would serve her well regardless of her future circumstances. You're right, Maya said. Some investments pay dividends you never expect. The automated market continued operating with corporate efficiency, but around its edges, human connections had created something more valuable than algorithmic optimization. A community where people looked out for each other, where temporary hardship didn't mean permanent isolation, and where small acts of kindness grew into systematic change. Maya never forgot the feeling of pushing groceries she couldn't afford back across a counter, or the relief of discovering that kindness still existed in the vast emptiness of space. But more importantly, she never forgot that individual compassion could evolve into collective action, proving that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its colonization capabilities, but its capacity to care for one another across any distance.